The Galactic Council chamber was built to impress. Its ceiling rose high like an open sky, glowing with soft light that shifted colors as different speakers took the floor. Tall windows showed the stars outside, slow and steady, reminding everyone present that the galaxy was vast and old. This was where great decisions were made, and today humanity stood quietly among many older civilizations. Lieutenant Alan Reed stood straight near the back of the human delegation area. He wore a simple uniform, neat but unadorned. His hands were clasped behind his back, his face calm. Beside him sat Kate Morris, a civilian envoy chosen for her sharp mind and gentle voice. She held a small tablet, though she was not reading from it. Instead, she watched the chamber with careful attention. Around them, alien delegates spoke in low, thoughtful tones. Some were tall and thin, with smooth skin that reflected the chamber lights. Others were short and wide, moving slowly as if every step was measured. A few did not move at all, resting in floating chairs or pools of clear liquid. Despite their differences, they shared one belief about the humans standing before them. Humanity has proven itself to be a stabilizing force, said one delegate, a long-limbed being with pale blue eyes. His voice echoed softly through the chamber. They heal damaged worlds and calm rising tensions. They listen more than they speak. Murmurs of agreement followed. Several delegates nodded or shifted in approval. Kate felt a small tightening in her chest. She had heard this before. The praise always sounded kind, but there was something beneath it. She glanced at Alan, who remained still, his expression unchanged. Years of training had taught him how to hide his thoughts. Another delegate rose, this one shorter, with dark, patterned skin and slow, careful movements. Humans show remarkable patience, she said. In disputes that might have ended in conflict, they offered compromise. In moments of danger, they chose restraint. The word restraint lingered in the air. Alan's eyes drifted upward, not toward the speaker, but toward the glowing ceiling. He remembered training fields on Earth, long marches under burning sun, and lessons drilled again and again. He remembered words spoken by instructors who believed deeply in discipline and control. None of that matched the picture being painted now. Kate leaned slightly toward him and spoke quietly, careful not to draw attention. "They mean well," she whispered. "I know," Alan replied just as softly. "But they don't see the whole picture." At the center of the chamber, the council chair signaled for silence. The light above dimmed slightly, and the soft murmurs faded. "Human representatives," the chair said, voice calm and measured. "You have been praised for your gentle nature and peaceful actions. The Council wishes to formally recognize humanity as a non-aggressive species within the coalition." Kate felt her fingers tighten around her tablet. Non-aggressive. The term sounded official, final. She rose slowly, smoothing her jacket before speaking. "Chair," she said, her voice steady, "we appreciate the Council's trust and kindness. Humanity values peace deeply. We believe cooperation is the strongest path forward." Her words were simple, chosen carefully. She had learned that simple language carried weight in this place. Several delegates smiled or made gestures that signaled approval. One even let out a soft sound that Kate had been told was laughter. Alan remained silent. As a military officer, he was not expected to speak unless asked. Still, he could feel the weight of the moment pressing on him. The Council was not just praising humanity. They were placing it into a category. After Kate sat, discussions continued. The Council spoke of future missions where humans might assist in rebuilding damaged planets or calming tense negotiations. No one mentioned defense. No one mentioned danger. As the session moved on, Alan's thoughts drifted. He remembered Earth's history lessons, stories of wars long past, written not to celebrate but to warn. Humanity had learned its lessons the hard way. That was why they chose peace now. Not because they were unable to fight, but because they understood what fighting truly meant. The session finally ended, and the chamber slowly emptied. Delegates moved in groups, talking quietly among themselves. Some passed by the human delegation, offering polite gestures or friendly words. "You are fortunate," said one delegate, a tall being with silver-toned skin. "Your people will never need to know true war." Kate smiled politely. "We hope that is true." Alan said nothing. Outside the chamber, the corridors were wide and softly lit. The air smelled faintly of minerals and something sweet. Alan and Kate walked side by side toward their assigned quarters. "They really believe it," Kate said after a moment. "They think we're harmless." "They think we're gentle," Alan replied. "There's a difference." Kate slowed her pace and looked at him. "Do you think that's dangerous?" Alan considered his answer carefully. "Misunderstanding always is." They reached a large viewing window that overlooked a docking area. Ships of many shapes and sizes drifted silently beyond the glass. Some were sleek and elegant. Others looked old, patched together over centuries. Kate rested her hand against the glass. "I wish they could see us the way we see ourselves," she said. "People who choose peace because we've seen the cost of violence." Alan nodded. Choice is the key word. From somewhere deeper in the station, a low signal tone sounded. It was distant, almost easy to ignore. Life in the council continued as it always had, steady and confident. Neither Alan nor Kate spoke again for a long moment. Both felt it, though neither said it out loud. The galaxy believed it understood humanity. And that belief, built on kindness and calm words, might one day be tested. For now, humans were welcomed as healers and mediators. As gentle voices in a loud universe. And as Alan looked out at the drifting ships and endless stars, he knew that gentleness, when chosen, carried a strength few truly understood. The news arrived quietly at first, through a soft chime in the human delegation's quarters. A small screen flickered to life, showing reports from distant human colonies on the edge of the coalition's explored space. The colonies were small, mostly farming and research outposts, but they were full of people, families, and children. The images showed smoke rising from the outskirts of towns, small explosions in the distance, and frightened faces on every screen. The threat was real, coming from an alien force far more experienced in combat than humans, at least in appearances. Lieutenant Alan Reed watched the images in silence. Beside him, Marine Ben Carter stood rigid, his eyes scanning the reports as if trying to memorize every detail. Ben was younger than Alan, but he carried the same calm discipline that only years of military training could instill. Unlike Alan, however, Ben's experience in actual combat made him feel something deeper as he looked at the screens. A quiet, simmering tension. Kate Morris, standing near the table, turned to Alan and Ben. "They expect us to stay calm," she said softly. "The council told us peace is our strength." But, her voice trailed off, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. Ben's gaze didn't leave the screen. "They don't understand," he said quietly. "They think restraint is weakness. That's all they see." Alan nodded, but his mind was already moving ahead. Evacuations had begun automatically, and automated drones were already coordinating transportation for thousands of civilians. It was the same protocol humans had perfected over decades. First, ensure the people were safe. Second, send warnings. Third, prepare defenses if needed. The aliens observing from the council or from distant fleets might never see the precision or the planning behind it. To them, it might look like hesitation, fear. And that misunderstanding made Ben uncomfortable. He had trained for war, studied strategy, and faced it in simulations countless times. But this was different. The aliens had never faced humans in actual combat. They believed in their own superiority, their own instincts for immediate attack and force. Humans did not act that way. The first reports came from the colony of Harbor's Point, a small settlement built on a planet with shallow seas and green hills. Smoke was rising from one of the farm districts, and several structures had been damaged. But the people were being moved swiftly to transport hubs. Evacuation pods lifted into orbit, carrying thousands to safety. The aliens watching seemed to find amusement in the delay. A message came from an observation post near the council chamber. "The humans hesitate. They do not retaliate. They will be destroyed without action." Ben clenched his fists, but he kept his expression neutral. He had learned long ago that anger could be seen, and seeing anger here would only confirm what the aliens already believed. "They don't understand," he said again. "Our first priority is life. They think that makes us weak. They're wrong." Alan finally spoke, voice calm, almost too calm. "Every move we make is calculated. Evacuation, warnings, containment. They see the calm but not the preparation. They see patience but not planning. That's why they laugh." The aliens did laugh. Messages streamed back from distant observers, reports filled with incredulity. One said simply, "The humans run. They do not fight." What kind of species avoids conflict at the first sign of danger? Ben shook his head. "They don't see that we are choosing when to fight. That's the difference. Waiting doesn't mean fear. It means control." As the hours passed, more colonies came under threat. Some planets were lightly populated, others held research facilities with valuable technology. Automated systems and human administrators coordinated evacuations flawlessly, moving people and resources to safe zones. Every step was slow and deliberate, designed to avoid chaos. Alien observers, however, had never seen this type of movement before. They could not understand why humans would not retaliate immediately. At the command center in orbit above one of the threatened colonies, Alan and Ben watched live feeds. Civilians were being loaded into transport shuttles, robots were clearing dangerous debris, and security teams maintained order. Everything ran like clockwork, precise and methodical. Kate whispered, "They still think we're afraid." "I can't tell them it's strategy, Alan. They won't understand." Alan's eyes were fixed on a large screen showing the first small attacks. Laser strikes hit empty fields and abandoned towns, missing the fleeing population entirely. Humans had deliberately avoided confrontation. "Let them think what they want," he said. "We know the truth." Ben's jaw tightened. He had been trained to act, to respond with force, to defend. Watching humans deliberately hold back felt unnatural to some part of him, yet he understood. This restraint was not weakness, it was discipline. It was the same discipline that had kept humanity alive for centuries, that had allowed civilizations to grow even after the worst wars on Earth. Alien observers sent more messages. Their tone was condescending, mocking even. They hide. They flee. They cannot face danger. Their colonies will fall without action. Ben took a deep breath, letting the tension roll off his shoulders. "They don't understand our patience," he said quietly. "And they won't until they see what happens next." Alan nodded without turning. "By then, it will be too late for them to judge us lightly." Meanwhile, the civilians continued to evacuate. Families held hands, children clung to small robotic assistants that guided them to safety, and engineers worked tirelessly to secure vital equipment. Even in the midst of danger, order reigned. The aliens could see the calm faces, the organized movements, the absence of panic, and they laughed again. Ben's hands rested on the table. He felt the weight of their misunderstanding. They think this is fear. They think we are weak. But patience, organization, and control, they're our real weapons. And they will see that when the time comes. Kate looked at both men, concern in her eyes. "Do you think the Council will ever understand that?" Alan shook his head slightly. "No. They see what they want to see. But we do not need their understanding. We need to protect our people." The day passed slowly, marked by the soft hum of communications and the occasional alert. Evacuations were nearly complete. Each small victory, families safely reaching orbit, children reunited with parents, supplies preserved, was invisible to the aliens. They saw only the humans holding back. Ben finally relaxed slightly, standing straight again. "We'll show them," he said. "They laugh now, but patience has a cost. And when it ends, they'll remember that humans are not weak." Alan watched the last transport shuttles lift off the planetary surface. The colonists were safe, their lives preserved. He allowed himself a small nod of satisfaction. "The galaxy thinks it knows us," he said quietly. "They have no idea." Outside, the stars twinkled endlessly. Ships moved silently through space, carrying people who did not know they had just escaped danger. Somewhere far away, alien eyes still watched, laughing at what they did not understand. Ben glanced at Alan and whispered, "Let them laugh. They'll learn soon enough. We wait, we watch, and when the time comes they will see what humans can do." The summons came as a soft chime in the human delegation's quarters. Ben Carter and Alan Reed walked side by side through the long corridors of the Galactic Council station. Their steps echoed on polished floors, quiet and measured. Every few meters, a screen displayed scenes from across the galaxy, stars drifting in silence, fleets moving like careful dancers, alien species going about their work. The Council had requested Ben personally, a Marine, to explain humanity's inaction during the attacks on distant colonies. Alan glanced at him. "They want your words to justify what they do not understand," he said. Ben nodded. "They will judge us by what they see, not by what we do. That is why I must speak clearly." Kate Morris, following close behind, reminded them quietly, "Remember, they think patience is weakness. Speak carefully." The chamber was larger than any building on Earth. Its walls seemed to stretch into infinity, reflecting light from unseen sources. At its center, the Council sat in a semicircle of high chairs, each delegate observing Ben with an intensity that made the young Marine feel measured, weighed, and studied. A hush fell over the room as he stepped forward. He straightened his uniform, took a slow breath, and began. "Members of the Galactic Council," he said in a steady voice, "you have observed humans and seen only what appears to be calmness, patience, and hesitation. You call it weakness. You laugh at our restraint because you have never seen the cost of war the way we have." The aliens shifted. A tall, thin delegate with smooth amber skin leaned forward, antennae quivering. "Explain," it said. "Why do you not fight when danger appears?" Ben looked at the rows of eyes, some alien, some not even eyes but glowing sensors. He spoke carefully, choosing words simple enough for translation, yet heavy with meaning. We avoid war because we understand it too well. War is not chaos. War is preparation. It is memory. It is resolve. The chamber was silent. The words hung in the air, strange and weighty. One delegate, short and covered in fine scales, tilted its head. Preparation? Memory? Resolve? These are not weapons. Ben shook his head slowly. No. They are the reasons weapons exist. Preparation means we know what must be done before the first strike. Memory means we remember every failure, every loss, every life that was taken by thoughtless violence. Resolve means we act only when action is necessary, with the full weight of knowledge and experience behind us. That is why you see patience in us. A ripple ran through the council chamber. Whispers of translation and discussion passed quietly among the alien delegates. They were not used to such an explanation. Most species reacted to threats immediately with instinct and instinctive force. Humans were different. They chose restraint and their choice was deliberate. Ben continued, his voice firm but calm. When humans go to war, it is not for glory. It is not for pride. It is for survival, for protection, and for the lessons we carry forward. Every conflict we have faced, every battle fought on Earth or in our early colonies, has taught us that action taken without understanding leads to loss. That is why we wait, why we prepare, why we endure before we act. Kate watched him from the back, her hand lightly resting on the edge of the console. She had heard Ben speak in simulations and lectures to other humans, but never like this. Here, in front of alien observers who could barely imagine the human way of war, his words carried weight, gravity. One of the elder delegates, covered in patterned fur and long, curling horns, spoke slowly. You speak as though war is a lesson rather than a tool. Is this true? Ben nodded. It is. War is never a tool for entertainment or power. It is a teacher. It reminds us of cost, of life, of responsibility. That is why you see us waiting. Patience is not weakness. It is strength. Strength guided by knowledge, by memory, and by the willingness to act with precision when needed. A soft hum ran through the chamber, a sound that meant quiet discussion among multiple translators and observers. Alien delegates exchanged glances, some shifting their weight, others blinking in ways that humans could not interpret. Yet Ben noticed the change. The laughter, the mocking, the assumptions of weakness, those were fading. Curiosity had replaced them. He took a step forward. You have judged humans by what you could see. You saw evacuation, organization, and calm. You did not see the planning that went into every action. You did not see the simulations, the training, the countless hours humans spend preparing for what we hope never comes. You do not see the weight of each decision because you have never carried it yourself. That is why patience seems like fear. It is not fear. It is understanding. Silence followed. The council waited, listening. The words were not dramatic, not loud, not theatrical. They were simple, clear, and deliberate. But for the first time, the aliens seemed to recognize that humanity had a strategy beyond instinct, beyond impulse, beyond what they had believed possible. One young delegate, bright with green skin and small, shining eyes, asked cautiously, "And when you do act, what happens then?" Ben's face remained calm. When humans act, it is with purpose. It is coordinated. It is precise. We do not fight for revenge or for display. We fight to protect what must be protected. You have seen only our waiting. You have not seen our action. And when action comes, it will be decisive. That is why patience is our strength. The chamber grew even quieter. The alien delegates murmured among themselves, translating his words and discussing their implications. For the first time, humans were no longer seen as gentle but weak. The council realized that the patience they had praised might have been a careful choice, a deliberate pause, a sign of unmeasured power waiting behind calm eyes. Ben glanced at Alan and Kate, who nodded ever so slightly. They understood. The first step had been taken. Humans were no longer simply observers in the eyes of the council. They were a species that had chosen restraint, yes, but a restraint built on history, on memory, on preparation, and on the readiness to act with precision when necessary. Ben looked back at the council. The warnings had gone unheeded. Despite every evacuation, every signal, and every attempt to show restraint, the alien forces pressing against human colonies did not stop. Ships moved into orbit, weapons trained on populated planets, and fleets prepared to strike. To the galaxy, it seemed humanity had waited too long. Some observers whispered that humans would now pay the price for their hesitation. But the humans did not panic. They had chosen to wait. They had chosen to prepare. And now the moment had come for action. Lieutenant Alan Reed stood on the command bridge of the flagship Resolute, overlooking a holographic display of the incoming alien fleet. Hundreds of ships, sleek and angular, moved in coordinated formations, assuming humans would still act defensively without strength. Alan's hands rested lightly on the console. Every calculation, every strategy, every contingency had been prepared long before this day. Beside him, Marine Ben Carter checked the deployment schedules. His expression was calm, but his mind was sharp, scanning every approach vector, every possible weak point. Years of training had prepared him for this exact moment. He understood the meaning of restraint, but he also understood the meaning of decisive action. Kate Morris stood nearby, monitoring communication channels to the evacuated colonies. Her tablet displayed thousands of civilians safely transported to orbiting stations. Every life had been preserved, every family accounted for. There was no chaos here, only order. Ben looked at Alan and said quietly, "This is what patience looks like." Alan nodded. "Let them see it." The first signals were sent not as weapons but as coordinated movements. Defense grids activated automatically around every threatened colony. Shields flared into existence, bright and protective, forming a barrier that covered entire cities. Alien ships that expected empty skies now faced a glowing wall of energy. Automated fighters streaked into formation, small but numerous, patrolling the perimeter with precision. Every action was deliberate, every motion calculated. From the alien perspective, it was astonishing. Some fleets hesitated, unsure why humans had suddenly gone from waiting to orchestrating such flawless coordination. Others tried to push forward, assuming their superior numbers would overwhelm a population they had assumed to be defenseless. Ben spoke into the communication system. "All units engage containment measures. Avoid civilian areas. Show precision, not destruction. Let them understand control." Orders flowed smoothly, transmitted instantly to every ship, every automated drone, every defense node. Humans did not strike blindly. They did not fire weapons at random. They used carefully targeted disabling strikes, cutting power to advancing enemy ships, jamming navigation systems, and forcing the intruders into neutral zones. Each move demonstrated intelligence, skill, and discipline. Kate watched the holographic projections with quiet satisfaction. "They're shocked," she said. "They expected chaos and now," she trailed off. "Now they see calm and it's terrifying for them." Alan's eyes never left the display. He had seen this in simulations, yes, but simulations could never fully replicate the effect on an opponent when humans acted with such precision. The aliens had assumed weakness. They had assumed fear. But humans had turned gentleness into a weapon of its own kind, control. Across multiple colonies, the same pattern unfolded. Ships landed only where necessary, automated systems repaired damage caused by previous attacks, and security units contained the aliens' forces without unnecessary aggression. Entire fleets were rerouted, trapped in precise zones where they could be neutralized without mass destruction. Alien observers could hardly believe it. Their eyes widened at the speed of coordination, the accuracy of every strike, and the lack of panic among the human forces. Ships they had expected to be destroyed were unharmed. Cities they had assumed would burn were untouched. And yet, the alien advance was completely halted. Ben leaned over the control panel and spoke quietly to Alan. "They think gentleness is weakness. Look at them now. They have no idea how strong we can be." Alan nodded. "Strength isn't just in weapons. It's in knowing when to act, how to act, and ensuring every action counts. That is what they're seeing." Kate added, "And they're learning the hard way that humans don't need to destroy to control a situation. That's the real lesson." The battle, if it could be called that, lasted only hours. Ships were disabled, not destroyed. Intruders were rerouted, not annihilated. Entire fleets were contained with minimal loss. The humans had demonstrated control, precision, and discipline far beyond what the alien forces had anticipated. By the end, the intruding ships had retreated or surrendered to containment zones. In the council chambers, alien delegates observed in silence. There was no laughter this time, no condescending whispers. Instead there was awe. Some were terrified. Some were curious. All were aware that the humans they had assumed gentle and weak were something entirely different. The council chair spoke finally, voice low and deliberate. "Humans, your actions today show power but also control. Your patience was deliberate and your response, precise. We misjudged you." Ben did not smile. He did not need to. Alan, standing quietly behind him, understood that the message had been received. Humanity had shown the galaxy not through brute force, but through skill, restraint, and calm authority, that they were not a species to underestimate. The colonists were safe, their worlds intact, and the aliens who had believed humans would crumble under threat, had learned a lesson they would not forget. As the humans returned to their ships, coordinating further protective measures and monitoring the remaining threats, Ben glanced out at the stars. They expected panic, he said. They expected fear. They didn't expect humans to act with control. Alan placed a hand on his shoulder. And that's the thing. They still don't understand. They never will fully. That's what makes us dangerous, not our weapons but our discipline. Kate watched the retreating alien forces, relief in her eyes. They'll think twice next time, she said. Or maybe 3 times. Patience can be frightening when it ends. Ben smiled faintly. Patience always ends with preparation. And when preparation meets action, it is unstoppable. Ships glided through orbit, precise and controlled. Cities remained safe, civilians unharmed, and the once feared alien forces now withdrew, unsure how to respond to a species that acted with such calm efficiency. The humans had not only defended their colonies, they had rewritten the perception of their kind across the galaxy. No longer would they be seen merely as gentle beings. The aliens had witnessed restraint turned into unshakable control, and the lesson was clear. Never mistake patience for weakness. Alan, Ben, and Kate stood together on the bridge of the Resolute, watching the stars. Silence hung in the air, heavy but peaceful. The humans had acted. The galaxy had learned. And in that quiet moment, they understood something simple but profound. Gentleness, guided by knowledge, discipline, and strategy, was a force that could not be reckoned with lightly. Ben's voice broke the silence. They won't forget this. Patience is powerful, but action proves strength. Alan nodded. Gentleness can be terrifying when it is deliberate. Kate added softly, and we choose it. Every time. The stars moved silently outside, indifferent to the drama that had unfolded below, yet they reflected the truth of the humans' actions. Measured, controlled, powerful, and respected. The galaxy had learned the first part of a lesson it would never forget. And for the first time humanity could breathe, not because the threat was gone, but because they had acted in a way that no one could question. They had chosen protection, precision, and discipline. And the aliens had learned that gentleness, when wielded by humans, could be a power unlike any other. The battle was over. Not a single human life had been lost, not a colony destroyed, and not a city harmed beyond what had already been repaired. The alien forces had retreated, their ships either disabled or contained. The humans had shown strength without cruelty, precision without chaos, and discipline without panic. And now, with the immediate threat gone, humanity returned to the role it had always preferred: diplomacy. Lieutenant Alan Reed walked slowly through the corridors of the Galactic Council station. The air was quiet, filled with the soft hum of distant engines and the occasional sound of alien delegates moving about. Everything felt different now. The same corridors that had once been filled with whispers, amusement, and polite underestimation now carried a new weight: respect. The Council had seen what humans could do, and they could no longer dismiss them as gentle or weak. Beside him, Marine Ben Carter moved with the same quiet precision that had carried him through the crisis. He did not speak much, letting his presence alone convey the confidence of someone who had acted decisively and successfully. Every step he took seemed measured, deliberate, as if even the floor beneath him could sense his control. Kate Morris followed, tablet in hand, but she did not need to look at it. The data on the evacuation, the defense, and the containment of the alien advance had already been submitted. Now she simply watched the reactions of the alien delegates around her. It was subtle at first. A delegate with pale green skin, whose kind had often regarded humans as harmless, now greeted them with a polite nod rather than the usual curious tilt of the head. Another, covered in thin silver scales, approached Alan and spoke softly, almost cautiously, "Your people, they act with control. It is impressive." Alan nodded, understanding the meaning. The aliens had expected panic, chaos, perhaps even retreat, and instead they had witnessed calm, efficiency, and undeniable power. He knew they had learned a lesson that could not easily be forgotten. Ben spoke quietly as they moved through the chamber. "They will think twice before underestimating us again." Kate glanced at him. "Do you think they'll ever truly understand us?" Ben's eyes did not waver from the delegation around them. Some may never understand. That does not matter. They will respect us, and that is enough." The council meeting began again, not to debate war or defense, but to discuss reconstruction, trade agreements, and shared exploration. The tone had shifted completely. Where once there had been polite curiosity mixed with doubt, now there was careful respect. Alien voices were more measured, their words precise. Even the laughter and condescension that had sometimes followed human statements was gone. Alan noticed it all. He watched as delegates adjusted their behavior, spoke with humans in a tone that implied recognition of capability, and listened more carefully than they had before. The change was subtle but unmistakable. The galaxy had learned a lesson. In a quiet moment, Ben addressed the council directly. His voice was calm, deliberate, and firm. Humans are gentle not because we are weak, not because we cannot fight, but because we choose to be. We have seen the cost of conflict, the pain it causes, and the lives it takes. Our restraint is deliberate, not accidental. Our patience is a choice, not a limitation. And when we act, it is with precision, control, and understanding. The chamber grew still. Delegates leaned forward, translating his words for their own kind, discussing them in quiet tones. Even those who had once doubted humanity now looked thoughtful, some even uneasy. They had assumed humans were simple, gentle creatures. Now they knew otherwise. Kate watched as an alien with bright blue eyes stepped closer. "You speak with clarity," it said. "Your people, they are not what we believed. Perhaps we underestimated you." Alan nodded, allowing a small smile. Underestimating humanity is a mistake the galaxy will not make again. Outside the council chambers, the stars continued to shine silently. Ships drifted in space, some returning to distant colonies, others to trade routes or research stations. The universe was quiet, almost peaceful, as if acknowledging the resolution of the conflict. Humans had not celebrated or boasted. They had acted, defended, and then returned to their chosen path of diplomacy. The galaxy had learned, and now it respected them. Ben stood at the window overlooking the docking stations below. Alien observers moved about, some pausing to watch the humans, clearly impressed by the calm authority they carried. "They don't laugh anymore," he said softly. "They no longer assume we are harmless." Alan placed a hand on his shoulder. "No. They respect control. They respect preparation. They respect the choice to be gentle even when we can be strong." Kate added, "It's strange. They thought they understood us and now, they still don't fully, but they know they cannot ignore us." Ben's eyes turned back to the stars. "That is enough. Understanding is not required. Respect is what matters." The humans returned to their usual duties. Diplomatic meetings resumed, trade discussions continued, and alliances were strengthened. The colonies continued to rebuild, aided by automated systems and careful planning. Humans were calm, measured, and composed. But beneath that calm, the memory of their ability to act decisively remained, unspoken yet undeniable. In the council chambers, the alien delegates spoke of humans differently now. Where once they had seen a species that avoided conflict out of fear, now they saw a species that understood it deeply, that respected its consequences, and that could act with unmatched precision when necessary. Alan watched quietly as one elder delegate addressed another. "Their patience is a warning," it said softly. "Do not mistake their gentleness for weakness." Ben's words echoed silently in the room. They had not shouted them. They had not displayed weapons or violence. They had spoken truth, acted with control, and shown that humanity's strength was in knowing the cost of war, choosing restraint, and acting only when required. Kate whispered to Alan, "Do you think they will ever forget this?" Alan shook his head slowly. "No. But they will always respect it. That is enough." The stars outside reflected in the polished floors of the council chamber. Humans moved through the corridors with purpose but without haste. Their actions were deliberate, their presence undeniable. They had shown the galaxy that being gentle was a choice, not a limitation, and that their restraint was backed by the readiness to act with unmatched efficiency. Ben finally spoke, voice calm but carrying weight. "They will remember that humans are not simply gentle. They will remember that we choose it. And the galaxy will never make the mistake of underestimating that again." Alan nodded, satisfied. Gentleness, when paired with knowledge, discipline, and preparation, becomes a force that cannot be ignored. That is what we showed today. Kate looked at both men, a quiet smile on her face. "We chose peace even in the face of danger. And yet, we proved strength at the same time. That is humanity." Outside, ships prepared for their next journeys. Colonies thrived under careful guidance, and the galaxy moved forward, now aware that humans were not just another species to be catalogued and observed. Humans were deliberate, disciplined, and respected. They had chosen their path, and in doing so, they had shown that strength could coexist with gentleness. The council chambers were no longer a place of amusement or doubt for humans. They were a place of recognition, where the galaxy finally understood that patience, discipline, and restraint were not weaknesses, but deliberate choices that carried power beyond measure. Ben Carter, standing quietly at the edge of the chamber, allowed himself a small sigh of relief. The humans had acted when necessary, and they had returned to diplomacy without losing control. The galaxy had learned a truth that it would carry forever. Humans were gentle because they chose to be, not because they could not fight. Alan Reed glanced at him. And that choice is what makes us strong. Kate added softly, and the galaxy will never forget it. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, indifferent to the events below, yet they reflected the quiet truth of the humans' victory. The lesson was clear. Gentleness, backed by discipline and understanding, was not weakness. It was power. And from that day forward, no species in the galaxy would ever make the mistake of underestimating humanity again.